Welcome to my Chrono Kayle guide. This is arguably the hardest comp to play as well as the best comp to play if you can pull it off. In this video, I'll be going over the build, the items you make, how to play the early, mid and late game, how to do the level 7 all-in, how to position your units, and how the different galaxies change your game plan. The build is very flexible as the only unit you need to play this comp is Kayle. In other words, you always play your strongest board and adjust it depending on the lobby. This is hard for most players, so I made 4 boards that I commonly end up with. First version of this build is probably the strongest version. Fits all the synergies Kayle wants. Kayle and MF are your main carries here. You can also swap out Ezreal for Blitzcrank if you want. Second one runs 4 brawlers. Here you have a really strong frontline. So if you run this, make sure Kayle has Rageblade plus 1 damage item like Morello or Hand of Justice. Third one can run triple carry if you have good items for Aurelia. Fourth one is the strongest version of the level 9 build, although at this point in the game, you want to adjust your build based on the lobby. The synergies Kayle wants is Blademaster, Chrono, Celestial, and Valkyrie. Which synergies you end up with depends a bit on which champions you get, as well as the items you have on Kayle. But we will talk more about which synergies and champions to add in specifically later. If this was a bit confusing and you have never played this comp before, I would advise to just go for the first example until you get comfortable playing this comp. Items for Kayle is number 1 priority in this comp. She wants at least 2 offensive items and 1 defensive item. The offensive items she wants are Rageblade, RFC, Hand of Justice, and Morello. IE can work if you have Valkyrie buff, and sometimes you can put Deathcap or Gunblade on her as well. The defensive items you want on her is GA, Trapclaw, or QSS. All of these are good. QSS is really good with RFC as you can corner the Kayle, and if you have Celestial buff, QSS is really good as Kayle will consistently heal for the first part of the fight. After you bait Kayle items, you want to make support items or MF items. MF wants AP or mana items like Deathcap, Morello, Hand of Justice, Spear of Sojin, or Seraphs. Support items are either tank or utility items to let Kayle stay alive longer and deal more damage. You put these on your frontline units. Support items are Zephyr, Redemption, Ionic Spark, Ziggurat, Bramblevest, Seek's Herald, or Thieves' Gloves. If you have Blaster in, Swordbreaker can also be a solid option if you have no better item to make, or if you can take it off a carousel. If you want to run triple carry with Aurelia, she wants Last Whisper, then IE or Deathblade. Seraphs and Deathcap can work on her as well, but you would rather have these on MF. If you get a Spatula, Blademaster and Celestial Spat gives you a lot more flexibility in your build. If not, then another option is to make Demo Spat on MF and then add in GP. I have made a general early game guide, so if you have not watched it, I recommend you check it out. But I will go over the early game when playing Kayle specifically here. Carousel priority is Bow, Glove, Rod, then Belt. After Carousel, you want to pick units that synergize well together and that you can 2-star. Some early game boards that you can aim for in your games are Caitlyn carry. If there are a lot of Blitzcrank or Infiltrator players early game, then move Caitlyn up and move Graves or Malphite down. Kai'Sa or Kha'Zix carry. If you have time to scout, definitely put them on the side where most people put their carry. If not, then just put them both in the center. 3 Cyber Lucian carry. If you can make red buff early, put it on Lucian as it will allow you to win streak, and you can still use the red buff late game with MF and Ezreal. Xayah carry. She's the best item holder for Kayle in my opinion. You don't care about Xayah late game, so you can just remake her and put in a 1-star version of her to complete the Celestial or Blademaster synergy. Xin Zhao carry works as long as you have the Protector buff. Items to make early game are Ionic Spark, Ziggurat, Redemption, Zephyr, Rageblade, Hajj, or Static Shiv. As a general rule, you want to make at least 1 item when you have 4 or more components. Be careful using up components for Rageblade and other important items for Kayle, but if you end up using them to make another item, it's not the end of the world as you will probably find another bow or rod later. I also want to add that you don't want to make Morello or RFC in the early game, as there are very few good Morello and RFC users this early, and the items themselves are not very flexible. The meta has shifted in a more aggressive direction recently, so you want to be a bit more careful when leveling aggressively in the early game. But if you are strong early game, you want to level to 4 on 2-2, and if you're still streaking, level to 5 on 2-5. And if you are weak, then playing passive and focusing on econ is the better play. If you don't have a single bow or rod after you've beaten Krugs, you want to look at your items to see which other comps you can go. Kayle might be out of the picture if you can't find those items in the mid-game. I made a general mid-game guide as well, where I cover how to decide which comp to go after Krugs, and I go more in depth there than in this video. When you get to the mid-game, you need a mid-game carry, then build your board around that carry. The units you find mid-game will most likely define your comp. If you find 4 brawlers, you will most likely use them late game. If you find a bunch of Irelias, you will most likely play her as well. I made some mid-game boards that don't require any forecasts, so you can aim for these in your games. First one runs Saya as your carry. You can consider putting Fiora in the backline if there are a lot of infiltrator players. Second one is just a different version of a Saya carry. Third one runs Lucian as your carry, and you can swap out Poppy for Wukong and Ezreal for Graves if you find them. Fourth one runs Caitlyn Ashe as your carries. You can put them both on the same side if a bunch of people are positioning towards either the left or right side. If you can get a Kayle off the carousel, take her unless you really need another item component. Any component on Kayle can turn into a useful item. Belt becomes Trapclaw or Morello, Sword becomes GA, IE or worst case a Gunblade or Seeks, Bow becomes Rageblade or RFC, Cloak becomes QSS, Glove becomes Haj, QSS or Trapclaw, Rod becomes Rageblade, Morello or Deathcap, Tear becomes Haj or worst case is Static Shiv, and Vest becomes GA. If you can't make a useful item with a component, you can always pop it off like I'm doing in the gameplay here. In the mid game, you have 2 options: play aggressive and try to win streak, or play passive and focus on econ. Again, with a shift in the meta towards more aggressive playstyles, you want to make sure you're putting in something good if you're going under 50 gold when leveling. In general, you level to 6 on 3-2 if you are on a 3+ win streak and you stay above 30 gold. If you're not on a win streak, level to 6 on 3-2 if you stay above 40 gold. If you're still streaking by stage 3-5, level to 7 if you stay above 30 gold. And if you're not on a win streak, level to 7 on 3-5 if you stay above 40 gold. If you are unsure of whether or not to level to 6 on 3-2, scout to see if other people have leveled and to see how many other players you beat by leveling. Sometimes your lobby will be weak or passive, so then leveling is the correct play most of the time. If the lobby is very aggressive, you want to be careful with leveling unless you get much stronger by leveling. Scouting is crucial with this comp as it is very flexible. If there are a ton of Vanguard Sorc or Rebel players, you might need to run Mystics. If a ton of people have built Last Whisper, you don't want to play Vanguards. Besides that, you want to see what other comps people are going and to see which comps are open. If you haven't fully committed items yet, pivoting to another comp sometimes is the correct play. But if you are going to pivot, make sure you have items that can work with the other comp, and you generally want to have a couple of the units you need for the comp as well. Comps that use similar items as Chrono Kayle are Brawler Blaster and Cybernetics. The level 7 all-in is something you do when you're getting low on HP and your board is weak. This is a play you make to try and get top 4. You level to 7 on either 3-5 or 4-1 depending on how much gold you have, and then you roll down. You want at least 20 to 30 gold to roll with. When rolling, you're looking for 2-star champions with good synergies. This is where this comp starts to be hard to play. For example, you need to know if Kassadin 2-star is better than Jace 2-star with your current board. And is Shen 2-star better than Blitzcrank 1-star when Shen doesn't give Blade Master buff and Blitzcrank gives a Brawler buff? The answer to these questions vary from game to game, but with experience you will get better at spotting which is better. This is why scouting is also really important, as in some lobbies Blitz is better and in other lobbies Shen is better. But in general, the synergies Kayle wants is Celestial, Chrono, Blade Master, and then frontline with either Brawler or Vanguard. You also need to look at your items to determine what to put in. If you have Rageblade RFC Kayle, you don't need 4 Chrono as Kayle already has a bunch of attack speed. You just need a strong frontline and she will pop off. If your Kayle is 1-star but has good damage items, Celestial is important as she only has around 650 HP and she needs to heal up after she takes any damage. If you have no attack speed items for Kayle, 2 Chrono is a necessity and 4 Chrono is very important. Late game you want to always be level 7 at 4-1. From here you need to decide whether or not to level to 8 on 4-3. If you have a strong board and about 50 gold after leveling to 7, You don't need to roll much on level 8 anyways, so going 8 here is fine, as you will have 20 to 26 gold depending on your streak. If you only have 2 to 3 2-stars and you feel weaker than other players, I would advise to roll here and make at least a couple more 2-stars to the point where you have 4 to 5 2-stars in total. I would advise not to roll too much lower than 10 to 20 gold, as you still want to level to 8 on 5-1 and have gold to roll with there. After you have leveled to 8, you need to decide if you can go level 9. To do this, you should only be missing 2 to 3 2-stars, and Kayle 2 is a necessity. You will not always find MF on level 8, so sometimes going level 9 is the correct play, as it is way easier to find MF there. Also, rolling on 8 to find MF 2-star is not easy, as you will need to roll through about 46 shops to find 2 MFs, which in total is about 107 gold to finish her and buy 2 more of her. But take this number with a grain of salt, as you get a free shop every round and sometimes you get lucky or unlucky. As people start getting knocked out, you need to adjust your comp to the rest of the players. If there are a bunch of Vanguard Sorc players and Rebel players, you might need to run Mystics, and if more than half the lobby has Last Whisperer, dropping Vanguards for something else might also be the play. But make sure you are not making your board weaker when swapping units. A 1-star Soraka and a 1-star Lulu is not better than a 2-star Ezreal and a 2-star Wukong, unless there are only magic damage comps left in the game. If you are running Thresh, you want to fill your bench with CC. If you have a 1-star Xayah on your bench, you need to sell it even though you still have Xayah 1-star on your board. I have a general Thresh pull tier list on the screen. Against different comps, some champions are better, but generally, you want your bench to be Lulus and Threshes. Thresh pulling in Thresh causes him to instantly cast, and then you can buy even more units to get pulled in. But most of the time, you want a Lulu 2 on your bench, and then once she is pulled in, buy more units in your shop to get pulled in. Sometimes you even have to roll to find better pulls. We will go over some general positioning with this comp, and then we will look at some more in-depth positioning later. General positioning will look something like this, where you split up Mana Reavers so they attack 2 different targets. Kassadin is in one of the corners as he will disarm anyone who puts their carry on the second row. Kayle wants to be in either of those 2 spots, although putting her on the second row is high risk, high reward. She will deal more AoE damage to other units, but she will be more exposed to them as well. For example, on the second row, she will be exposed to a Kassadin ult, as well as mech auto attacks. You also want to have MF and Kayle on opposite sides if possible. Therefore, both your carries won't be exposed if the enemies break into one of the sides. If you have RFC on Kayle, you want her in the backline. Just be careful, as this makes her more vulnerable to infiltrators, so make sure to scout before doing this. If you are running Irelia, you can backline her to deal with the infiltrators. Moving on to some more in-depth positioning examples. Against the first guy, the big threats are Sona, TF, and Vel'Koz. Poppy is not that scary, as our comp deals mostly magic damage, and she only has 1 item. We put Kayle on the third row, as she stays out of the Vel'Koz range, and she will target Wukong as he's the closest target. Therefore, her ult waves will hit Sona, TF, Poppy, and Wukong. Kassadin is on the far right side of the first row, as his ult will disarm the TF. Wukong is next to him, as his ult will knock off the entire enemy team, so you want his ult to go off as fast as possible. In this situation, we want to keep Xayah safe, so she doesn't take damage and gets targeted by the Zoe ult. MF is on the opposite side, as you want her to be away from Kayle, and she gets a much better ultimate angle from the bottom left corner. In the Kayle mirror matchup, it's all about whoever's Kayle stays the longest alive, as well as getting their MF to cast first. His Kayle has QSS, so you can't disarm her with Kassadin ult. Therefore, we put Kassadin between the enemy Wukong and Leona, so that he disarms all 5 of those champions when they are grouped up. We want to put Kayle on the third row left side, as she will target Irelia and hopefully her ult will AoE his Kayle. If you are going to position Kayle like this, you need either QSS or Trapclaw, as a Blitzcrank on first row all the way right side will hook your Kayle. So if you don't have QSS Trapclaw, move Kayle 1 square to the right. Against the third guy, you want to deal with Xayah. In this example, she is only 2-star, but most of the time she will be 3-star. You want to Mana Reaver and disarm the Jarvan, as he is the life and blood of this build. When he ults, the whole team gets 100% attack speed, which makes Xayah snowball into the insane shredder mode. Therefore, Kassadin goes all the way on the left side front row. We put Shen next to Kassadin, as Shen ult blocks all damage from auto attacks, resulting in Xayah dealing 0 damage as long as Shen's ult is up. We split up the frontline units a bit to make the Ash Arrow not hit our backline units. Kayle wants to be in the same spot as last time, but again, if you don't have QSS Trapclaw, you want to put it one more square to the right and put Xayah or Ezreal on the left side corner in case you play against a Blitzcrank player. MF wants to be as close to the right side corner as possible, but since Caitlyn targets farthest away, we have to put her closer to the middle. Against the fourth guy, you want to put a tanky unit in the right corner as you want to make the Jinxes take as much time as possible before they ult. Kassadin wants to be in the far left row as his ult will disarm at least one Jinx. All of his damage threats are on the left side, so you don't care about protecting the right side as much. The game plan is to break into the left side to take out the Jinxes, which is where all his damage comes from. Lastly, we're going to talk about how the different Galaxies change your game plan. In the Neekoverse, you want to double Neeko Kayle if you find her in the early mid game, as this will allow you to win streak easily. If not, then use the Neekos to finish off pairs so you can go to level 8 or 9. On Lilac Nebula, you want to take the Kayle. If you didn't get Kayle, then go for normal Carousel priority. On Medium Legends, I would not recommend you play Kayle unless you get really good items for her at the beginning of the game. Reroll comps are much better on this map as they get more time to hit their 3 stars, so I would advise to play a reroll comp on this map instead. But if you end up playing Kayle, you want to fast 8 most of the time. The Super Dense Galaxy does not change much besides the fact that you get more flexibility in your late game build. The trade sector is probably the worst galaxy for Kayle as the hype roll comps like Xayah Shredder and Vanguard Sorks can hit their 3 stars much easier on this map and are therefore kind of OP, so if you can, play a hype roll comp on this map. On Treasure Trove you get more items, so running triple carry with Irelia is going to be easier. You can also greed a bit more for perfect items. Star Cluster doesn't change much, other than the fact that sometimes you want to prioritize taking the champion over the item. Galactic Armory doesn't change that much. Just note that if everyone gets dropped good Kayle items, there are going to be multiple people trying to go Kayle in the lobby, so scouting is more important here. Thank you for watching the video. If you learned something, please leave a like on the video as well as hitting that subscribe button. We also reached 1,000 subscribers recently, which is kinda insane considering I uploaded my first video 18 days ago. This channel is growing faster than I would have ever expected, so I want to thank you all. If there's something you want me to make a video on next, or if you have any feedback for me, please leave it in the comments, and other than that, I'll see you guys later.